Creating a site collection in SharePoint is an operation that can only be done from the central administration and that requires administrator rights to do it. In some organizations, the number of site collections is very little, so they normally rely on their IT departments to create site collections manually. But in many other organizations, the number of site collections is huge and is constantly growing, so this approach is no longer valid, as it makes the IT department become a bottleneck. It's in these situations when automating the provisioning of new site collections is a great candidate for an Nintex workflow. Let's see an example. In our scenario, we want to dedicate a site collection for each customer in our organization. As I mentioned before, the end user cannot create that site collection. That's not an action allowed to the end user in SharePoint. We need to ask for that to our SharePoint administrator, and he or she will come to the central administration, go to the Create Site Collections operation, provide all the necessary parameters, and create the site collection manually for us. In order to speed up and automate this process, we have created a SharePoint list in which any user can come to this list and request the creation of that site for this customer. In our example, for simplicity, we are only asking for the name of the customer and a description for that site. That would be enough for us to, when I hit save, kick off automatically a Nintex workflow that will create the site collection following our internal policy. Let's have a look at the workflow. This is a very simple one. Essentially, we are using the Create Site Collection action, and after that we will use the URL generated for that site collection to update the column in that SharePoint list to have the link to that new site, and we will also make use of that URL to notify the requester that the new site collection has been generated for him or for her. The Create Site Collection action is located under the Provisioning actions in the Workflow Designer. Let's see it in more detail. If I double click on the action, I can see here that there is a list of values that I need to provide to configure this action. These are normally the values that the SharePoint administrator would be providing when creating the site collection manually in the central administration. We need to give a title and a description to our new site collection. We need to specify who will be the site collection administrators, under which URL we would like to host our new site collection, and what is the template that I want to use to create the new site collection. Now, some considerations before using this action. First of all, the credentials. As we mentioned before, creating a new site collection is an operation that can only be performed by a SharePoint administrator, which means that in here I need to provide a valid set of credentials with the minimum rights in the central administration to create site collections. But notice that in here I can use a workflow constant. That means that the SharePoint administrator could in advance create a workflow constant with a set of credentials to create site collections, and that workflow constant can be used by the workflow designer to create site collection without knowing the user and password. The URL of the new site collection cannot be any URL. As you probably know, all site collections in SharePoint must be created under a managed path. Every web application in SharePoint has a list of managed paths, that is, a list of allowed URLs under which we can create site collections. In our example, we have created a wildcard managed path to store all of our new site collections under customers. Now, coming back to our workflow action, in the URL name dropdown, I can see that there is only 3 managed paths. There is only 3 possibilities to create site collections under with this web application. And for the last part of the URL, I can use a dynamic value using the context of the workflow. In our example, the last part of the URL would be the name of the customer, which is the value that we are retrieving from the end user in the initial form. But if I wanted to, I could use a workflow variable and pick up the name of the customer from our CRM. You can also use the workflow context to provide the title and the description of the new site collection, which is, in our case, what we are doing, retrieving the name and the description from the initial form. We can also assign dynamically the site collection administrators of our new site collection. In this example, we are specifying that the site collection of this new site collection would be the initiator of the workflow, that is, the end user requesting this new site collection for a customer. And as a general rule, I can also specify that I'm going to be using the manager of the person requesting this new site collection. In terms of templates, as in SharePoint, you are going to find all the available templates that you have for creating site collections, whether they are out-of-the-box templates or custom templates. You can also use quota templates in the workflow action, and if you have created any quota template, you can apply that to the new site collection. In terms of security, we can specify if we want to create the default groups or not. Just remember that when you create a new site collection, the site collection is the top level in the hierarchy of security. And lastly, we can store the URL that we are going to generate when creating this site collection in a workflow variable. That's going to be very useful for further action. In our example, we are storing that URL in a workflow variable, and we will use that value to update the column in the list, and also to send a notification to the requester that the new site collection has been created with the link to that new site collection. Now, if we go back to our initial list and refresh the page, we are going to see that we have created a new site collection, and in the list column we have updated the value with the URL of the new site collection. And if I click on that, it takes me to the new site collection. So, as you can see, automating the provisioning of new site collections is something that can be easily done with a workflow, and that would give your end users the freedom of getting new site collections without depending exclusively on your IT departments. And on the other hand, using this workflow, your IT department can make sure that all new site collections are created properly, following your internal policy.